All right, everybody, Sylvia here, and I am in Flagstaff, Arizona. I'm at an RV park, Woody's Mountain Campground, and I came into Flagstaff after camping at the Grand Canyon for 4 nights. I was dispersed camping on a fire service road in a national forest. It was fantastic, very quiet, in amongst the trees, and I was camped close enough to the south rim that I could ride my trike into the park, and there's a wonderful bike path goes right along the southern rim, and I got some great video, and of course I'll have a video coming out about that. But while I was there, I was having a real issue with motor cutout on my Shimano Steps E8000 electric assist system. And this is something that I've had an issue with in the past. So the first time that this happened, I was in Yuma, Arizona, and I had been doing a lot of off-road riding. And at that point I had a different controller and the display was removable. And it turned out there was just so much dirt on the back of my display that it was interfering with the connections between the controller and the motor. All I had to do was clean it and everything was fine. And then this winter I was in Palm Springs and I had motor cutout issues. I was with my friend Dave and he suggested that I just go through all the connections, clean them with alcohol, and use an air compressor to blow everything out. And sure enough, that took care of the problem. But then on this trip, riding into the park of the Grand Canyon, I had motor cutout issues again, but this time cleaning the connections did not help. It turned out to be more involved, and I ended up fixing the problem, and I really want to thank everybody for giving me so many wonderful suggestions and just taking the time to comment on my last video. Gosh, I really feel like I have a wonderful community here. It's exactly what I wanted when I started this channel. You know, so many places on the internet, Facebook, Twitter, other YouTube channels, you know, they tend to be kind of snarky, but my channel is not. I actually get responses that are really thoughtful and sincere, genuine, authentic, and I really appreciate it. And while I was at the Grand Canyon, I just had this feeling that the battery was not fitting in the battery mount right. It was almost as if the battery mount had expanded, or maybe using the battery so much, you know, charging them, taking them off the mount, putting them back in. Maybe they had worn enough that I wasn't getting a solid connection, and that's why I was getting motor cutout. I tried a number of things that worked, didn't work, and I'm going to show you that in this video. But I ended up calling my friend Paul, master mechanic at Recumbent PDX, and he's actually the mechanic who installed my system. And he explained the problem, and I'm going to show you what that was. But at the time, I didn't have the proper tool to get the screws off on the battery mount. And the only thing that worked was, this is a tool for my Avid BB7 mechanical brakes. And it worked for this one time, but I was worried that I had stripped out the screw. And so I came into Flagstaff to replenish all my supplies so that I can continue on and do more boondocking and dispersed camping. But I also wanted to get to a hardware store where I could get the proper tool and, if needed, replacement screws. So I have bought a whole set of metric Allen keys, and so I want to show you guys, I'm going to show you guys in this video some of the things that I tried to fix what's happening, and then I'm going to show you what actually worked. All right. Come on, Myrtle, let's go. So as I'm riding out to the main road, so I'm going to be taking Highway 64, which is the main road to the entrance of the south rim of the Grand Canyon. Yesterday, or maybe it was the day before, I did this, and I had a lot of motor cut out. And in the past, I've had this issue before since I've owned this Shimano Steps E8000 maybe 3 or 4 times. And previously, all I had to do was clean the connections, and that solved the problem. But I cleaned the connections, and I'm still having a problem. And it's a problem with both batteries. And so it makes me feel like it's not a problem with the batteries, it's a problem with the connection from the battery to the motor. And I am kind of following a theory that perhaps the Shimano Steps, the Shimano batteries aren't fitting in the mount as snugly as they did when I first bought this. I had it installed about 1.5 years ago, and so it's possible that using the batteries, taking them on and off the mount, that maybe it's just not as tight. And so I have added a bungee cord, which I'm not that crazy about because it is stretchy, and so hopefully it'll be strong enough. All right, so interesting. I was almost to the trailhead, the end of the bike path at the Grand Canyon, and I saw that one of my batteries was very, very low. And so I thought, you know what, this is going to be a really good test for my theory if this bungee cord is going to work. So I switched batteries. And I had a crazy amount of motor cut out. Oh, so disappointing. In fact, using the bungee cord on the second battery seemed to make it worse. Like sometimes the motor wouldn't even turn on. So I got to the trailhead and I stopped and, looked at it a little bit closer. And it looks to me like there is so much movement in the mount that I can actually move the battery back, and I can do motor cutout on my own. And so what I did, I was like, I need something to fill in this space because the battery is getting loose from the motor connection. So I took a piece from my Grand Canyon map, folded it in half, stuck it in the back of the battery, and it's holding. So interesting. All right, so I am trying to come up with a solution to my motor cutout, and it seems that I need to fill in the space on my motor mount. Somehow something has stretched, maybe putting the battery in and out of the mount for 1.5 years. Maybe some of it has worn away enough to create enough space that I can actually move the battery back in the battery mount and cause motor cutout. So I just added some duct tape to the battery mount, and I was able to get it to turn on, like here. Turns on just fine, just push the button and it turns on. And then all I have to do is push back on the battery and it turns off. So I'm going to try adding a little bit more duct tape and fill in this space so it won't move back and cause motor cutout. So I've got 3 pieces of tape, and you can see that the motor is on. I've got green lights on the battery. And all I've needed to do is push backward on this battery, and I am losing connection. I am getting motor cutout. So let's try it. Yep, again, I am able to push back on this battery, and I am losing the connection between the battery and the motor. All right, so after all my failed attempts, it turned out that I was actually on the right path. Like, I think my diagnosis that the battery just wasn't fitting right in the mount was correct. But it turns out that there is a hidden adjustment, and I put in a message to my friend Paul at Recumbent PDX. He's a master mechanic. He actually installed my electric assist, and he's probably installed 1,000 of these systems. So I knew if there was something else going on that he would be able to tell me. And in fact, there's kind of a hidden adjustment in the battery mount, and he explained how to fix it. He said, you know, it's probably just a loose screw, and that is going to solve your problem. And sure enough, it did. And so let me show you what I did and what Paul explained. And I think that this is something that's going to be applicable to other electric assist systems. Even though I'm using the Shimano Steps E8000, I'm betting that the battery mounts for most of these electric assist systems are pretty similar. So this may be something that you can use even if you don't have the electric assist system that I have. So this here is the battery mount. So this is the prongs where it actually connects to the motor system. And then in the back, there is a cap, and there's 2 screws, and these screws require a 2mm Allen key. So they just come off with 2mm Allen keys. There's one here and there's one here. I've already taken this one off. And you can see it's sort of a cover that goes over where the key fits into the lock. And then there are 2 screws here, one here and one here, that use a 4mm Allen key. And when you loosen that up, you can see that this whole thing is adjustable. And so this is the part that was coming loose. And it wasn't super loose, but it was enough to affect the way the battery was fitting in the mount. So let me tighten this up, and then we'll put the batteries in and see if I can recreate the motor cutout, or if this actually fixed the problem. Okay, so I've got 2 batteries for this system. You can see this one's charged up. So it's in the battery mount, and I'm going to turn it on. So we've got green lights. It's a little bit hard to see in the sunlight. Let me put some shade on it. And then you can see that the battery is on. And then now what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull back on this battery as hard as I can, because that's all I needed to do before I figured out what this problem is, and I was able to recreate motor cutout just by pushing back on the battery. So I am pulling as hard as I can. I'm pushing on the seat, pulling back on the battery, and you can see that the battery is still got green lights and that the motor is still active. So I'm going to try this with the other battery just to make sure. pretty tight. You can feel it pulling the battery out of there. So then we'll put the second battery in. Turn it on. And get my shadow here, it's still green. And we've got an active motor. And then let me try and pull back on the battery again and see if I can recreate motor cutout, and I cannot. I still have full contact with the battery still on, and the motor is still active. So I think that this is really the solution to this problem. Now I have the proper tools, and I'll know to check that in the future. I mean, it is pretty tight right now, so I really doubt I'm going to have to tighten those screws anytime in the future. But again, you know, there's now two things to check when you have motor cutout. First, clean all the connections. Up until now, that has solved the motor cutout issue every time. But if that doesn't work, you may have to go into the battery mount, take off that cap, and tighten up the screws. So all right, you guys, that's my video on how I fixed the motor cutout issue for my Shimano Steps E8000 electric assist system. I hope you found it interesting and helpful. Please subscribe to my channel, like the video, leave a comment in the comment section below. You know how much I love hearing from everybody. All of your suggestions and comments in the last video were fantastic, and I just love the community that's been developed here on this channel. So I want you guys to remain safe and healthy. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.